Happy Sunday, guys. How are you? It is Sharla Kornegay coming live to you guys with another Forever Friends Academy live episode. How are you guys? Happy Sunday. Happy, blessed Father's Day to all of my fathers who have biological children, all my father figures, all, the uncles, the grandfathers, people who step up in children's lives to be a positive, godly, impactful figure for them. I appreciate you guys so much. It has been a wonderful day. Honoring and praising my husband for all he does. He's a wonderful, 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 wonderful father, and I'm so glad that I get to not only have the honor of calling him my husband, but also just to be able to see and watch him, cultivate our children, nurture our children. Their fathers are irreplaceable. I always say I'm a firm believer of the nuclear family and the importance of having a mother and a father in the home. And, I think definitely in culture today, I am one of those who do believe, especially in American culture right now, that there is an emasculation of men and there is a misconstruing or misunderstanding of masculinity and the necessity of it. So I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for, like I said, not only my husband, but all of the men who were father figures to me growing up that I most definitely so definitely badly needed. I thank God for them because I am the woman I am today because, God offered them as angels to me to give me some kind of guidance, some type of instruction, some type of structure. Yeah. And with them offering their strength to me in times when I needed it, it helped me. It helped me to grow. So happy Father's Day to all the fathers. I want to take time out to honor and appreciate you guys today. You're honored. You should be honored every day, just like I say on Mother's Day, right? It's one day is never enough to honor our mothers and our fathers for what they do, the instrumental, right? Roles and positioning they play in our lives. So I'm gonna start off tonight with some quotes about fatherhood. And the question that I'm going to throw out to you guys tonight is just really, if you want to share, feel free to share some of maybe the most impactful moments you've had with your father or a father figure, someone who is a male presence in your life, who's been very impactful to you. So definitely, if you want to share, that's pretty much what the question is tonight. What are some of the most either memorable moments, impactful, either actions that person did towards you, or even if it was something that you saw them do experientially and it impacted you, or it was something that they said to you that stuck with you. So that's the question for tonight. I'm going to say some of the quotes, and tonight is Relationship Sunday Scenario. So I have a scenario for you guys tonight. I think it's an interesting one. We'll see. I think it kind of rolls into, maybe continues the conversations that we have been having lately, starting from 2 podcasts, I think, lives ago, where we were talking about Evan K. Williams and the new look and journey of single motherhood. And I think we were talking about fatherhood, and we talked about Harris Butker's commencement speech on our last live, where I was asking you guys, did you think it was appropriate for him to, speak directly to the women at their graduation and, basically highlight the importance of motherhood and becoming a marriage and becoming a wife and the nuclear family. And that was a great conversation. And so I think tonight's scenario will kind of roll, right into some of those things that we've already been talking about, just add on to it. So we'll see. But first, let me get into some of the quotes that I found about fathers tonight. There are so many, but there were 3 that I was like, okay, I definitely like these three, and I want to say it to you guys tonight because it definitely stood out to me. And of course, just as I gave you guys the question for tonight, if maybe it's a quote that you heard about fatherhood that you want to share. So, first quote about fatherhood that I want to share with you guys is, fathering is not something perfect men do, but something that perfects the man. I really like that quote. Let me say it again. Fathering is not something perfect men do, but something that perfects the man. Really good. That's by Frank Pittman. So I love that quote. Let me know, guys, if you like, that quote. And of course, we always say, is it something that you think is a good gem? Well, first of all, do you believe that the quote is truthful? And then do you think it's a gem that you can use in your relationship? So, which I definitely think so. Because just in experientially seeing my husband grow into fatherhood and be able to father our children, it is definitely something. And I think while I was looking for a Father's Day card for him, I came across a card that said, it's something when you find someone to basically spend the rest of your life with. But it's another thing, right? To find someone who you feel like you can literally bring a child into the world with and parent. That means that person has a certain aspects of their character, right, that you want to kind of like honor and duplicate, hopefully, as the child comes into the world. So I thought that was a really, really, really good one. So let me know what your thoughts are on that. The second one that I wanted to present to you guys is this one. It says, I cannot think of any need in childhood as strong as the need for a father's protection. That one, let me say it again. That one definitely hit home for me. Let me say it again. And that quote is from Sigmund Freud, right? So let me say it again. I cannot think of any need in childhood as strong as the need for a father's protection. Ooh, yeah. I would have to wholeheartedly agree with that. I would wholeheartedly have to agree with that one. A father's protection is just unmatched, in my opinion. I think it's beyond my opinion, though. I think that quote is just laced with so much truth. But let me know what your thoughts are on that. And actually, I'm sorry, guys. It was actually 4, not 3. So I got 2 more to share with you, and then we'll get into tonight's scenario. So the third quote says, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. Ooh, Frederick Douglass. It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. Again, that is by Frederick Douglass. And I think I really like that quote, and I wanted to share that tonight because I think it goes really hand in hand on some of the subjects that we've been talking about lately, especially when it comes to, the new look and journey of single motherhood and women of certain status and having a certain amount of wealth, choosing to literally go into single motherhood intentionally, right, by choice. And also talking about Harris Butler at a college commencement celebration and speech, putting in and choosing to highlight the importance of prioritizing family and marriage and putting honor and I guess respect back on the position of the homemaker. And I think those last 2 quotes that I talked about, as far as there's no stronger need than the father's protection, right, of a child, as well as the one that I just read where it talked about, it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. That's it, right? It's like when we have broken families, then produce, right, broken children that then turn into either be broken men or broken women, yeah, it's harder to now relearn things, right? It's hard to recondition ourselves, and the process of healing, although very transformative, it is a very challenging thing. And I think no matter, even if you have what we would call the ideal household, right? The nuclear union, there are things in life, right, that none of us can escape. And there are necessary experiences that we have to encounter here in life. And some of those experiences, there will be some pain or suffering that we will probably have to experience and go through, but necessary, right, for the necessary transformation, not extra. So, I think that's very true. It's true. And I think that shows the importance of why it is so important for us to do this, talk about relationship topics and skills, and, do our due diligence to talk about these topics in life that aren't talked about enough, and give us some type of, I don't want to say upper hand, but advantage, right? At least give us some type of awareness, or understanding of the waters that we're about to enter, at least, right? You never know, because you have to kind of jump in, and you never know what you've learned and if it's really stuck with you until you're in it, right? So, but at least having the conversation helps. And I think having people in spaces like this, like the space that I have, and where we bring honor and praise to fatherhood, and bring, fatherhood and men a certain amount of honor and positioning in life, then it's helpful, right? It's helpful not only for the men in our lives to understand the importance and the value that they hold, and I think that just would make stronger families, and will then of course produce greater communities, and then so on and so on. So that is the third quote, and the last quote on fatherhood that I wanted to share with you guys. Hey, Asia Creighton, welcome. I just started, so I was just basically, since it's Father's Day, going over some quotes that really stood out to me about fathers. And the question that I asked the other participants that are on is, feel free, you don't have to, but feel free to share with me an impactful moment, that you've had with either your father or a father figure in your life. Maybe it was something that they said, or maybe something, an action of either kindness or goodness, or that they've done towards you, or something maybe that you saw them do towards others that just really stuck with you. So feel free, if you want to share that. And the last quote that I want to share with you guys tonight, there's so many, but these, like I said, these are the ones that really stood out to me. And the last one that I will share with you guys tonight is, the power of a dad in a child's life is unmatched. I'll say that again. The power of a dad in a child's life is unmatched. That quote is by Justin Rickleps. I hope I pronounced that right. Justin Rickleps. The power of a dad in a child's life is unmatched. And again, I think one of the reasons why I wanted to highlight some of these quotes with you guys tonight is because we have been having extensive conversations about, whether it's the new look and journey of single motherhood, and people, women of certain status and professionalism, I guess I will say, choosing to go into single motherhood, to make sure that their fertility windows don't expire. There's a lot of conversation in when, they're doing that single motherhood, the look is different now, right? It's not this, at least in their argument, it's on a financial end, right? It's not this woman who is struggling to make ends meet. It's not, they feel like they have the resources to be able to do this, but that's only one angle. And honestly, of course, we all know we have to be able to acquire a certain amount of finances to take care of our children. But that is only one small angle, right, of parenting and of engaging with your child and meeting the needs of a child. And there's really no way to replace the two fundamental people that, came together to create this, you know, human being, this other human being. So those are quotes that I wanted to share with you guys. Let me know if any of them kind of resonated with you. And, let me know your thoughts. Maybe you don't believe some of them. That's fine. We can leave space and room for that as well. And I know that today is not easy for many of those who might have lost their fathers, like me, who fathers might not be in their life. Maybe you have an estranged relationship with your father, distant one. It's not easy, right? It's not easy, but my prayer is that you would be the type of individual, or at least be able to have the opportunity that was given to me, someone who lost their father at a very young age, to be able to put God's, presence in his spirit and let him be the ultimate father figure, right? Because God is the father of all fathers, and I think in my head, one of those, I guess that would be the quote. And just to kind of segue into answering the question that I posed to you guys while I'm waiting to see if someone else answers, that is the quote that stands out to me. And that is the quote that kind of offered me, freedom, really, in my mind and my being and in my heart, to be able to understand that my father, even though he can't physically be here, God is the father of all fathers. So I can tap into, whether you want to call it the masculine presence, the masculine authority that I would prayerfully would have hoped would have come down the pipeline of my father to me, and be able to gain that through my relationship with God. And I think for me, once I realized that, then I realized that God can put anybody, right, any male presence who he felt would reflect his character to me, and they would be able to offer some things that, because due to my father passing away, not being able to give me some of those things that I would be, that I was missing. And so because of that, I could be able to identify all of the other angels that God presented, to me. So I pray that if you haven't experienced that yet, if you haven't experienced someone who you feel is someone who is a godly father figure to you, or a male presence in your life that you can glean from, that can impact your life positively, that I pray from this moment on that you'll be able to, one, have your eyes open, four, to be able to identify that person and be able to take the opportunity when it presents itself. And I pray that God bring those people in your life, so that you can feel their presence, and their presence can offer you, I guess, a fatherly essence or presence in your life. And, so that I think that's one of the quotes that really, really stood out to me. Like I said, that helped me to not necessarily be so attached to wanting my father to physically be here, to be able to, develop me, cultivate me, let me learn about men and things like that. And I think also certain examples that are coming to my mind. There was a wonderful father figure for me. He basically was a older man. We used to call him Brother Acreage. My grandmother would send my sister and I to like a little small Caribbean church. Very small Caribbean church. It was like a storefront church. If anybody have ever heard of that, it wasn't like a mega church. Didn't have their own building. They do now, but they didn't at the time for many years. And oftentimes the church would just be held like literally in a small section in another building that they would rent out. And there was a gentleman called Brother Akers. So my grandmother would send us, but she wouldn't go. And the memory that is coming to me now that is really impactful that I want to share with you guys, that I really now have so much more honor for, because the church literally, I could walk there, probably walking from my household. It was literally like around the corner, guys. Like literally I could come out of, I lived in, I don't know, like a complex of houses. And basically, if you came out the house, you literally walk down the road and you'd make like a left and the church was right there, right? So, sometimes my sister and I would walk. And I remember as we started going to the church, he was like an elder in the church and his name was Brother Akerage. And he would start picking us up. He would start picking us up to go to the church in his car. And I remember sometimes I would think like, why? Like, why is he coming to pick us up? It's like literally like maybe 3 to 5 minute walk, if that, to go there. But it would probably take him longer, right, to drive to my house because there was like a light, in between. And I didn't know where he would have to come from to travel to the church. So I'm assuming maybe he would even have to come further than where I lived. But he would literally come from his house and then pick us up and like religiously and consistently take us to church. And in my mind, it just blew me. And I remember it blew my mind. Every time he picked us up, what I would look forward to, he'd have all like these mints. Like the little peppermints that are in the clear paper. And he'd give it to us. And that was like, a little highlight of a little candy for the day. And he would literally, take us back home. And now that I'm older, and God bless his soul, he's passed on. But I realize that him wanting to pick us up every time to make sure that we were going to church was, one, he wanted to encourage and keep us motivated to continue to keep going to church, right? That was number one. And then two, I realized that when he would come and pick us up, that was his way of protecting us, right? Me in my simple mind back then, as a child, and you would think I would know because I did experience some things, unfortunately, at a young age that children really shouldn't experience, meaning knowing that there are predators around. But I guess I didn't think of it in that way because thankfully my grandmother stepped in to raise us and take care of us. And I felt like the neighborhood and the community that she brought us in was a good community, right? I didn't feel, at least at that age, what do I know, as a child, but in my feeling, in the energy, and probably it was in comparison from things that I had already experienced. So it was very light compared to that. So my guard wasn't as up in that community. But for him, I think he understood that two young girls who don't have their father, right? Because both my sister and I didn't grow up with our fathers. And then on top of that, we don't have also our mother and our grandmother, even though me and my little self, because she was so strong, I didn't know that she was taking us in, and she was literally in her elderly age, right? She was in her 50s taking care of us, taking care of us. And so he knew that we needed protection. He knew that these two young girls, even though they're walking from their home and it's a like 3-minute, 5-minute walk, anything can happen in between that walk, right? And so now that I'm older, I really honor it so much because he would do it consistently. And that was his way of not only providing support for my grandmother, providing support and protection for us, but he understood and he didn't feel like it was going out of his way or would take anything from him to protect us in that way. So now me being, older, I honor that, I really honor that. And it reminds me of one of the quotes that I put out to you guys today, that Sigmund Freud said that there is no stronger need, right, than a father's protection of a child. And so that's one of my probably most memorable experiences of a father figure in my life. So I'm going to stop because I see some new faces, friendly faces, free cool. First of all, welcome. On Twitch. How are you? I do sing. I do sing. I didn't do my introduction today, so I guess no better time than right now. And Eric is on here. It's so funny. I have one person on Twitch saying, "Do you sing?" I do. I am a singer. On stage, I go by Sharla K. That's Sharlak. You can Google my name or just go on Spotify, iTunes, title, whatever your choice, your music platform of choice, and you can be able to kind of peruse my music. But Eric is on here. He grew up with me in high school, and he's over here like, sing. I am. I know. I always tell you this, Eric, but I promise you, I am just now getting back and switching gears and getting into the lab to work on not only new music, but also to work on my chops, okay? To fine tune my vocals, because I do want to incorporate me coming on here, singing along with doing the podcast. So soon come, I promise you. I promise he's coming. And Justin, welcome. So my question to you guys tonight that you guys came in on was basically because it's Father's Day, in honor of Father's Day, I just figured if you have any stories that you wish to share, you don't have to, but you can tell me any kind of impactful, either whether it's a quote you heard, whether it's a statement that your father or a male father figure, right, either has told you, or if it's an experience that you had with them. That's the question for tonight. What is it? What are the things that really stood out to you from people who are in your life, that if they're not your biological father, maybe they stepped up to be a fatherly figure to you. So that's the question for tonight. And I'd said about 4 quotes tonight in regards to fathers. So just in the honor of Father's Day, I think men need to be honored in this season of life, especially American culture. I don't know if you guys have saw, I think it's Little Uzi Vert is the rapper, but he has, I believe, like a brand, partnership with Marc Jacobs bag. And I don't know if, I'm trying to look at him now. I don't know if you guys have seen the ad for it, but whoa. Okay. So like I say, it's like, whoa, I think he is, sporting the bag, and I think it's green, and then he's got like green gloves on, but it's very feminine in the ad. And I get it. I know that we are in this era where all the clothing is like gender neutral and things like that. And I get it, but I cannot deny at the same time the emasculation of men. And unfortunately, I do believe, just like we were talking about them, unfortunately in culture right now, people not honoring women taking on traditional roles in the household. I also think it's the same on the other end, where traditional masculinity in men is being demonized right now. And it's I don't think that's a good recipe for anything. When we demonize certain positioning and infrastructure of relationships and marriage, I think it throws everything off of alignment. So, yeah. So I think for me, this is my space that I can, choose to engage with you guys and present topics that I feel are important, to not just to myself, but all around. And so I really wanted to take space and time to honor the fathers today. So I'm going to read what I believe Justin wrote something, and then I'm going to get into tonight's scenario. I think it should be interesting. I'm really curious to see what y'all are going to say about the scenario tonight. But Justin says, are you ready for our new song? And by the way, I'm working on a new special joint dedicated to you. Really? Oh, wow. I feel like, Justin, every time you come in here, I feel like it's Christmas. Because he always talks about new music that he's been working on. I appreciate you. I am... Like I told you, I listen to that song almost every day, Just the Way You Are. It's such a great vibe. And I really, I'm like that. I want to make sure that it's, the right lyrics to match the energy that you brought to the track. So once it's done, yes, be ready for the world to hear it and things like that. So hopefully you'll like what I have been working on to put to it. So we'll see. But yeah, I'll be looking out for the new music. Just kudos to you, first of all, just for continuing, to be creative and create. It's so important in life. I think it's easy to get into a monotonous routine, and it's very easy to get into life and want to build a life for yourself. And which there's nothing wrong with this. If you're a person who's working the 9 to 5 or working for another corporation or another company, that's fine. However, the truth is that when you're doing that, you're building, right, someone else's vision, and you're a necessary component to do that. So it's nice that either if you're a person that's working a 9 to 5, working for another corporation, that you still find, spaces and pockets in your life where you get to just create something that comes from your heart and your soul. And so I appreciate Justin when he comes on and tells me, he's working on new music. I know it's helped me because I have done both spaces, right? I've worked in both spaces, and I do both now. Right now I'm not, because school has finished, but I just started substitute teaching in the school district that I live. So, there's no shade in doing that. It's most necessary for us to have, people to be employers and there be employees. But I'm just highlighting the fact that if you can still have enough energy and wherewithal to also pour out your own creativity, it's a really good thing, and it helps balance, out the kind of crazy that can come out of life from time to time. All right, so let's get into the scenario, folks. I really want to know your thoughts on this one. All right, so tonight's scenario is, we have a married couple, all right? Before they got married, they were very excited about the family that they were going to start. Let's just say, since we talked about Harrison Butker's speech on the last podcast, let's fast forward, and one of the women that were literally at, listening to his commencement speech, and she is one of the women that he highlighted that said, I'm sure there's plenty of you thinking about the successful careers that you'll enter, but I'm sure that there are a lot of you, right? Most of you are excited about the marriage that you'll have and the children that you will birth. She is one of those women, right? So let's just say she decided to prioritize family, and of course she had someone who chose to be with her, chose to marry her. And so they were super excited about having children. And in their discussion, they wanted to have 6. All right. But as when they got married, so far right now, they have 3 children. However, there have been a little bit of health issues and health scares as she, right, in the process of her giving birth to each child. And so she has been advised from her doctors to not, right, have, or risk having another child, right? And so, of course, her husband understands. He does not want her to risk her life, risk anything happening to, any future children that they might have. And so they're fine. They're happy. However, through time, her husband really can't really let go of wanting, to have more children. And, for her, he's a wonderful husband. He's a wonderful father, great character, good natured, and things like that. So he comes to her and says to her basically, I love you wholeheartedly. I don't want to be with anybody else. I do not want to step out on our marriage or anything like that. But there is a yearning inside of me for fatherhood, and that I would like to leave more of a legacy than just the children that we have. So he presents to her that he would like to be a sperm donor. He would like to be a sperm donor, right? And for any of you guys know, you're a sperm donor, you donate the sperm. There is no limit when you're a sperm donor, meaning I guess, let me put it this way. There's no laws for limits. I think that each facility that you go to as a man, they can put like a cap on it. So maybe one facility might be like 10 families that he can, right? Maybe 10 women that he can impregnate with that one, right, vial of sperm that he donates. But in other facilities, it might be 20, it might be 40. I remember as I was thinking about bringing this to you guys, and you guys are like, Sharla, what in the world? Like, what did you come up with? Some Tyler Perry stuff, right? But as I was thinking about presenting this to you guys, I wanted to research it to see if there was a limit, because I didn't know, if there's a limit. And that's when I found out that it wasn't. And there was a story that I came across. I didn't go crazy and read the whole article. So it's for right now, it's allegedly, right? But there is allegedly a man in the Netherlands that fathered, right? Or through his donation, 500 children. Could you imagine? 500 children, y'all. Oh my gosh. So nonetheless, back to my little salacious relationship scenario that I'm bringing to you guys tonight. He presents this to his wife, and he feels like this is a harmless way for him to be able to continue to have legacy. And this is his argument. He feels like he's a good character person. He's a good natured person. And there's a lot of people who, whether it's maybe not even through donating sperm, but just unconsciously, right, procreating with other women who don't have good character and good nature. And here they are, right, just reproducing parts of themselves in other children. And for him, he feels like he would do it a different way. And so he presents this to her in hopes that she would be okay with it. And for him, he might not want to know all of them, but he said that he would like to, put a clause or sign a waiver where at least maybe 10 of the children that he does is able to father through his sperm donation, that when they are of age, they will be able to find him and connect with him. The wife is, she's of course shocked by what he's presenting to her, but she does understand because she also does believe that he's a good-natured person. And she has even said that if they could have more, then she definitely would, because he is, that much of a stand-up man and father, that is a person that you would want to, right, have more legacy in the earth. But she can't get over the fact of feeling like, oh my gosh, we have our family and our unit, but then now there would be these other children somewhere out in the world. And if it is the case that, they come of age and they want to connect, how, right? What would that look like? What would that do to their family? So she's not like 100% all the way in on him doing it. And I think also in the back of her mind, it's like, okay, I'm going to know that you're here fathering, right, in real time, the children that we've had together. But then there are going to be these children that are out in the world that you're not. And who knows what's happening to them. So that's the scenario, guys, right? That's the scenario. So let me know, first of all, hey, Diamond, hello, beautiful. Thank you for popping in. I don't know if you're still here. You came in on me. You're probably like, what is Sharla talking about? Sperm donors and all kind of things. But I'm doing a relationships scenario. So hopefully you heard it from the beginning to the end. It didn't come in the middle and wonder like, what did I just enter? But for those of you who heard it from the beginning, let me know. Definitely the women in here like Diamond, what are your thoughts? Would you be okay if you were in the scenario and your husband presented that to you? Would you feel like, oh, it's not a problem because it's not like he's stepping out on us, in the marriage, and he was honest and open and transparent and telling you this, and he just really wants a bigger legacy left in life. And I guess there's a aspect of it where he's being a good Samaritan, right? And he's able to, help someone out in need who wants to have a child? Do you look at it like that, or you're like, heck no? Like, no, there's no way that I could agree to something like that, or, I don't think it's right. Do you think it's, you know, perpetuating more broken homes? And even though you want to have a legacy, it's not the right way to go about it. I don't know. And for the men in here, what are your thoughts? What do you think? Do you understand like where the man is coming from? And do you think in how he's presenting this to his wife that it's like, okay, he's thought of it thoroughly? Does it sound does it sound something that is viable? It can work without causing disharmony and dissension and resentment and all kind of things in his current marriage. And when I was thinking about, I know y'all probably like, Sharla, what is going on? What is going on in your mind that you thought of this? But honestly, it was a spinoff from hearing about Ebony K. Williams and her choosing to do single motherhood. That kind of like really sparked my interest, because I was like, first of all, this I'm not, I don't know a lot about that process and how that works. And so it made me kind of want to, dive into that and see. And so when researching her situation and realizing that the sperm bank that she used to, help her conceive, they also had a waiver where the gentleman that she chose to be the father of her child, that he would allow the child to meet him when the child was of age. And she also had interviews from other families, I guess other women, other families of the children that he's also already fathered. So I was like, whoa, this is very interesting, So this scenario kind of came from that. But it also made me think about biblically, right? Where you would have, of course, wealthy men, right? Whether it be kings, you had to have, right, the finances and the wealth to be able to take care of multiple women. That's why usually when I talk to a lot of men who make the whole, right, polygamy argument and like, oh, it's a man's innate way and nature of being. And I'm like, no, stop selling those stories. Most of the times polygamy was by circumstance. It was not due to, I like her legs over here and I like this on her over here, and so I'm going to, pick these two or three to be. No, it was nothing like that. It was circumstantial. And a lot of times, especially if you're reading the Bible and you think of it from a biblical perspective, there would be wars, right? And in those wars, the first people that you're going to go to, that's why men are so important, masculinity and strength. And that's why I think we shouldn't demean it in society. We should not take it, the wrong kind of view and perspective on it, because it's necessary, right? And so if there's a war, any smart nation, the first people that they're going to try to take out are the men. They're going to try to bind the strong men so that they can, right, be able to cause chaos in all the other areas. So that's what would happen. They would go in, they would have these wars, the men, right? They kill off the men, and there would be women that were left over. There would be women that were left over. So a lot of the kings would take them on as concubines and things like that. And of course, they would go on into them, and then now they would have, as many children, right? So many children from that, and create a bigger legacy. But marriage and coming together was very centrally focused in that way. It wasn't so presented in the way that we deal with it now in present day culture, like, oh, I'm finding the person that I love and the one and only person for me. It wasn't an emotionally driven kind of concept of love that drove them. It was literally, okay, we get married, the children that we have, then they become workers, right? So it's like we have to go from place to place. We have to crop. We have to, we have to survive. And so the more the hands, the greater, right? The work that could be done, the ground that can be tilled, and things like that. So that's what that was for. So in this scenario that I'm bringing to you guys, that's what I thought of. I thought like, okay, he definitely, loves his wife, doesn't want to, you know, go out and be with someone else, but he still wants his legacy. Interesting. Interesting. So that's where I got it from. Let me know what your thoughts are. I know it's a messy, it's a messy one, right? Doesn't seem like it's too messy, but it is kind of messy. Now that I think of it. But I really do want to know what your thoughts are. Hey, Emily, how are you? Thank you for joining us. I have been on for a while, so you did miss it kind of like a lot. But oh, word, my goodness. I'm trying to figure out how do I even summarize the scenario that I just said. I don't know if I even want to summarize that. But you came in on me presenting the scenario for tonight. And the scenario is basically there is a married couple. They were excited about the family that they were going to create before they got married. And they both agreed on having 6 children. However, there were complications and health risks that posed a threat with each child that the woman had. They have 3 now, but she was advised medically to not, have any future children because of the medical risks to her and the child. And of course, the husband agreed. Definitely does not want to put his wife in danger or anything like that. However, he, cannot let go of wanting to leave more of a legacy in this life. So he presents to her, can he basically donate, be a sperm donor, to be able to create more life. He doesn't want to step out on her. He just wants to stay committed to her in a relationship. And that would provide him to know that he has more children and more legacy here. And he does pose to her that he would like to be the type of sperm donor that when the children come of age, at least 10 of them, they can connect with him. And I was telling them before you came in that when those types of banks don't usually, there's not, I guess, this law, right? That is just this umbrella for those type of sperm donation banks, right? Meaning like each organization can probably set their own cap. Like maybe one organization says only 10 families, right, per whatever donation that the man gives. But for some, it's not. It could be 20, it could be 40. And I was telling them I came across when I decided to present this scenario to you guys, this article that said in the Netherlands that a man allegedly, because I didn't even look all the way into it, allegedly fathered 500 children. My goodness. Wow. You know what I mean? Like when I read that, I thought about King Solomon in the Bible because, it talks about how many wives and how many concubines and so on that he had. But that is just like, whoa. So when you came in, I basically am asking everyone their thoughts. The wife is on the fence, right? Because, even though she completely agrees, like he's a wonderful husband, he's a incredible father, and if she could, she would, choose to have more children and put his type of essence and character in the world through them. But she can't get out of thinking like, okay, how is this going to affect our family? Me knowing that you're here fathering our children, but then there are, I don't know how many children out there in the world that you are potentially a father of. And then what happens when they come back, and the 10 that you have stated that you've given a window of opportunity to connect with you, how do we reconcile that? How does that change the dynamics of our family and things like that. So she's on the fence, and he's like, any, I don't see where the harm would be done, because I'm here with you. I will be here fathering our children. None of that will change. And then I can also, be able to have multiply my legacy here. So that's the scenario. Let me know what your thoughts are. I know it's an interesting, messy one tonight, but that's along the lines of the things that we've been talking about lately, right? With Ebony K. Williams going to single motherhood, her amongst other women who are choosing. And so I was like, okay, this is, we can probably do something like this. So that's the scenario. Let me know where you guys land. Are you with the husband? No harm, no foul. I'm here. I'm committed with you. I get to be a good Samaritan. I get to multiply my legacy. There are people who are going around unconsciously procreating, with people with bad character, with bad nature, and they are just pouring themselves out into the world, and maybe people like, this is him, maybe the people who are like me, who are good natured, good hearted, that would, prayerfully, genetics working in the right way, create people who would be more, I guess, more leaning towards having that type of good natured character. We need more of us in the world. So this is a way that I can do it and not step out on my marriage. And this doesn't take away from how much I love you, how much I'm committed to you, and fathering our children to the best of our ability. I don't know. Do you agree with him, or do you are like, no, definitely the wife is absolutely right. It's crazy. It will be messy. There's no way to avoid it. Which side do you take? Which side do you take? Emily said, well, 500 children is a lot, right? Seriously, a lot. A lot, right? For absolutely. And, for some of the men on here, I would love, because I tried to think of flipping this scenario on its head. And I wanted to know how many men on here, if the shoe was on the other foot, right? And of course, as a woman, oh my goodness, that's a whole nother thing, right? But there are women who step into, who become surrogate mothers, right? Who will, are angels really, and hold to term children for women, or families who can. So I'm curious for the men on here, if it was the shoe was on the other foot in that way, right? Would you be okay with, one, maybe even just marrying or being in a space with someone who feels like, I think I've never, and I would love to. If anybody is a surrogate mother out there that's listening to the podcast, please contact me, because I would love to have an interview with you, just to ask you so many different questions, because in my heart, in my mind, in my thinking around it, is that I think you'd have to be an individual who feels like they're very strongly called to do that. But that's just my thinking. But if it was the shoe on the other foot, and would you be okay, right, with having a wife, a woman who feels like maybe that's her calling, and that's right? And I guess it's a little different, because with him being a sperm donor, he is the father of those children, right? That whatever the woman that he impregnates, he's a father. With surrogacy, right? That could be different. She could be holding literally someone else's, and they just implant it inside her. So that's different in that way. But there are also, right, scenarios where, it's sometimes the eggs that the woman has is not viable at all, and so you will have a surrogate who has, the sperm from maybe the husband, and that sperm will meet her egg, and she'll carry the child, and in that way she would be definitely the mother, right? So yeah, there's a lot of different dynamics here, but I'm curious to hear from the men if they would be okay with that, because it's kind of similar to the somewhat a lot more complex, right? That goes into it when a woman gets impregnated. But as far as the principle wise, right, and being able to be understanding in that way, it takes a lot on both ends. So that's what we're talking about tonight, folks. Let me know what your thoughts are. And Miss Josie, how are you, beautiful, and your beautiful family? Oh my goodness, I don't know when you came in here, but you're probably like, what is Charlotte talking about? Surrogacy, sperm donors, etc. Listen, I said we talk about all relationship topics on here, and nothing's off limits. And this is a world, right, that people are navigating. There are many of us that are fortunate where when you get married, you choose to have a child or children that there's no complications, right? It's just like you didn't have to try. God's blessing and His favor just allowed you to be able to get pregnant. And but then there are other people that's not their process, right? And so these things are put in place to be supportive aids, right? Of course, we, the hand on the clock, right? The pendulum can swing all the way to the left or to the right, and maybe go to extreme measures and where things can get really, really selfish, kind of like what we were talking about, the Evan K. Williams, where you're just intentionally kind of going into single motherhood, and it wasn't necessarily because there was all these maybe medical complications and things like that. You're just intentionally saying, I'm just going to look at this thing in one way, in one perspective, and so then therefore, right, the child is going to kind of have to face the repercussions of that. So I don't ever want to shy away from the area just because it's something that I didn't necessarily have to go through in my process, and understand that there are people who do have to, kind of use those routes to be able to conceive. So Emily says, see, if you want to continue your biological legacy and are willing to deal with the consequences, sure. If you want to continue a more spiritual or more moral legacy, maybe adopt a child or two. See, this is why I love Emily, and I always tell you guys, she's so mature. And, like, it's pretty simply said what she said, right? She's able to kind of like put it through, put the line in the sand, right? Because at the end of the day, right, what she's saying is true. It's like, okay, yeah, if you want to continue a legacy and, willing to deal with the consequences or repercussions that come along with making that decision, sure, go ahead. But if you want it to be more of a spiritual and a moral legacy, maybe adopt a child or two. And I love that because, as I introduce these scenarios, we get to be the coach, right? We get to be the therapist. It's not our situation. We're far from it. So it's great way of being able to kind of extract certain principles and dissect it and kind of see, as I like to say, extract all the selfishness out of it. That's really what we're doing, right? And I always say to you guys, selfishness just means to look at something from only a small perspective or one angle, or not include or look at something holistically and get out, like they say, bird's eye view, or from God's perspective, and include everything. And I love her answer because with that second statement that she said, it's like, okay, you can still continue your legacy and be a father, maybe not a biological one, but you can still continue your legacy and be a father to someone and adopt, a child or two. And that way, there's no repercussions as far as the child coming back at some point in your life and saying, this is what I went through because you weren't here, right? So I love it. Very lovely answer. Very wise, laced with wisdom answer, Emily, in coming in and stating that. And I would have to agree with her. Because it's going back to, right, the first quotes that I presented to you guys tonight on fatherhood. All of that is put into the answer that Emily gave us, where we talk about the power of a dad in a child's life is unmatched, where it talks about that there is no, right, greater need you're right, in childhood as strong as the need for a father's protection, right? And so all of that is kind of taken in consideration with the answer that she gave, because I think that's the part that is hard to get away from. And just speaking for someone who, by experience, definitely grew up without my father, and, unfortunately, people in my, biological uncles and things like that not being present when I was a child, it is this feeling. And for me, I guess it was double fold because, my mom couldn't take care of me for, a good portion of the time. So when people see that, especially people who are predatory, it's almost like you're out to the wolves, right? It's like there's nobody there to protect that child. So I can easily come in, and attack that child, try to influence, try to persuade, try to manipulate, because there's nothing there, right, to counteract. And I will definitely tell you that's how I definitely felt at a certain point in my life until my grandmother stepped in. Thank God for her beautiful soul, to put me in a better positioning. But I most definitely felt like that. Definitely felt like that through the younger ages, and you can kind of sense it when, even as a little child, you can kind of sense a person feeling like you were easy, right? You were easy to be able to really just do wrong to, because there was no one there in position to protect you. There was no one in there to guide you. And so, going back to the example that I gave you about, the elderly man who was at my church, who would literally give my sister and I rides to our church, even though we could walk there within like a 3 to 5 minute walk. He would drive us every Sunday because he understood that it only takes a moment, right? A moment of not being fully looked after or fully parented. It only takes a moment for someone to step in and try to do harm to a child. And so, again, I appreciated him and his foresight and his wisdom, beyond what I could ever have thought of, and his due diligence of doing something that he felt could protect us, So I think, I would have to agree with Emily on this. And I think I would, as I was thinking about this, it was like part of me was like, maybe that's no harm. He could just do that and have his legacy. I get it. He still wants to stay with his wife. Maybe it's not harmful, but that's just one angle, right? Or two angles where he feels like, okay, I'm still going to be faithful to my wife. I'm still going to do what I need to do to father my children. But then it's like, what happens to those other children? What happens to those other children? And I get it. There's no guarantee for all of us to have this ideal situation, you know. But I think there's a difference from like making decisions that are going to cause extra suffering and unnecessary, right? Pain and heartache either to yourself or another individual, versus if you were trying to do something, you were really aiming to do your best, but your best still could not avoid going through or learning, this lesson, or going through this process to come out better. That's a different thing. That's a different thing. And I think with him intentionally going in and doing it, who knows what's going to happen, because who knows what it, God forbid, if whoever the woman he does impregnate, what if something happens to her? I've experienced and heard people who have, grown up in the system, right? Meaning like their parents aren't there. And so, adopting a child is great, when you are going to people who are well, who are mentally sound, who are emotionally put together. And so they're angels and being good Samaritans and showing the child goodness and taking that child in as their own. That's an ideal scenario. But there are so many people who you speak to who have grown up in the system and that has not been their experience, right? There are people who are just adopting them and they're broken. And you cannot probably bear some of the unimaginable stories that they would tell you about their experiences here. And so, or there in that process and in that system. So that's how important, a father's presence is in a child's life. So I think I'm wholeheartedly agree with Emily on this one. I think that would be the decision that could incorporate his longing for wanting to multiply his legacy. Of course, it wouldn't be, those children would not have his biological makeup. No way of getting around that. However, I can tell you that I am an example of people and men who have been in my life, who were father figures to me that impacted my life so much that the principles that they live by are now, right, principles that I used to guide my life by. So a part of their makeup is reflected through me, even though, right, we're not blood. Yeah, my blood is not, their blood is not flowing through my veins, right? We're not biologically tied, but the impression and the influence and the positive impact that they've made on my life might as well, right, be a biological father to me because they impacted me that greatly. So I think when you can look beyond it, and I think that also helps, because we've been talking about these topics that are kind of interconnected and intertwined. I think in the one answer that she put out there, that that's a solution that really dismantles the ego and dismantles selfishness to where it can be really, what's the word I'm looking for, inclusive in the way that someone can approach, motherhood or fatherhood. If you're somebody who has either had difficulties or someone who is at a certain stage in life and not finding that there is someone who you can see yourself, being a parent with and growing together in life and experiencing all those joys and transformative moments that parenting does offer us. And not everybody's going to want to do that, right? Because there's deep yearning, for many people who are dealing with those things and who want to feel like this person, this is my blood, this is flesh of my flesh, right? That I'm looking at. And so I understand that. But there's no way to deny that, the answer that she presented pretty much makes it really clear, like there's a way that you can go about this, that it can still be morally and spiritually upstanding, and you can still pour out your legacy into future children, And I think when solutions come like that and they are entrenched with the truth, then us as people and as humans can either just decide to say, okay, wow, there's no way to deny that. That solution kind of covers all corners, It's just a matter of, do I want to concede to that? Do I want to do that? Or do I want to just go with this way? Because this is the way that I best see fit for that need to be met, And a lot of the times, I think the biggest lesson we can kind of take from all these 3 consecutive podcasts that are kind of interconnected is that's the difference, right? Between you making a choice driven by your own strength or your own selfish will versus you making a decision that is really backed by, God's truth, universal truth, or soundness when it comes to something. And I think in life, we have many opportunities where the truth is presented to us, and whether we desire to take it in or not, or we'll just decide to do it in the way that we construct in ourselves that it's the best way to do it. And whenever you, at least I know through experience, whenever I've taken the other road, other than being truthful wholeheartedly to myself and to the others that would be involved in my decision making or my process, I have always incurred like unnecessary pain and heartache. I've always added on to it when I wanted to do it with my own strength and my own will instead of really submitting wholeheartedly to the truth. I went to, and we're going to wrap it up because I've been on for a while. And really, like I said, Emily's answer kind of just came in and dropped the mic. Only was in for a few minutes. It was like, oh, okay. You sound like you're completely like you've been watching my podcast for a while, Emily, and you're like a Forever Friends Academy graduate, like elite, like, oh, okay, I get this. Let me tell you what the answer is, right? All jokes aside, it reminds me of her answer that she gracefully just gave to us. I went to church today with my husband and his father and our two little ones. And the pastor, I was like loving it. It was community church. And the pastor, Dave Crosby, I was so like enamored with his message because, as you guys know, I do relationship coaching and I literally had just started series. Well, I don't want to call it a series. We were going to talk about the topic, and we still are. We just started last week about are you kind or are you nice in your relationship? And we are literally are going to study the difference between being kind and being nice, right? And literally, when I go to the church service, that's the message that the pastor's talking about, you know? And I was just like, oh, this is perfect. You know, for me, I look for the signs, like, am I going in the right direction? You know, I always want to not just push what I want to push out there. So even when I come on live with you guys, I literally sit back and think like, okay, what direction do you want me to go in? You know, today, what do you want me to talk about, God? You know, I don't want to just go off on my own, you know, my own little pathway. And so nonetheless, when I went in there and he was talking about, I was like, this is perfect. Let me get out my little notepad on my phone, take some notes, see what, you know, things that I've already researched that align and take in some things that are new that he's saying. And one of the things, because I'm going to talk about it with you guys too after I do my private session with my Forever Friends Academy group membership. So he said something that, you know, when someone is kind, it means that they're full of grace and they're also 100% full of the truth. And I was like, ah, this is great. This is conversations that my husband and I have all the time, literally just recently had. And I absolutely loved that statement because we live in a world where people are nice. And to be nice, you can be selfish and be nice. You can literally be dishonest and be nice. You can choose to say instead of the truth, or you can choose to not accept the truth and say something that you feel like is better, you know, maybe more politically correct. Maybe you think if you don't say the truth, it's going to not ruffle as much feathers and things like that, right? Whereas when you're kind, you have both the truth and grace for that person coming together, you know? And so there are many conversations, you know, that we definitely have on here on the live, where I always like to, right, navigate and explore those lines of can we find the truth in this discussion? Can we find the truth in this scenario that I'm bringing? Can we be able to sift out, right, the areas of selfishness that's in it to come to? And that's what I train my couples to do, right? There are a lot of therapists, coaching experts and things like that will say compromise, being able to compromise is one of the, you know, you have to have that in your relationship to be able to work with each other. And for me, I tell my clients actually the opposite. I say, no, do not think compromise first. It should be like the lower tiered, right? Instead of thinking compromise, we want to think first sacrifice, and then we want to think collaboration. And we want to the best way, let me not say we want to, the best way that I have, either experientially through my marriage and my relationship, as well as seeing it work for my clients to do that, is that when we are discussing something, it's fine. You can tell me all about what your feelings are and what you want and things like that, and I can do the same. But at the end of the day, we both agree that on the cutting board, we're going to strip the fat, right? Let's just act like whatever we put our feelings, our emotions, and what we think we need or want, we're going to trim the fat like meat, right? And once we trim the fat and we get down to the meat, and the bones of it, that's where the truth lies. And we both say we're going to concede to the truth, right? No matter what it is, we're going to concede to the truth. And I think Emily coming in the time that she did, and the kind of option that she gave, that's really what she did in a very simple manner, was hear what was going on, right? Literally trim the fat and look at, okay, this, if we go this route, then we'll only be hitting these many angles, or what will be driving us will be this kind of selfish perspective. However, if we use this pathway and we look at it like this will include more. It will encompass, right, a lot of other things. And that's what being kind is, right? When you're kind, you think collectively. You don't just think about yourself, you think about others too. You think about how it's going to affect others. You think ahead, right? You think of the rippling effects that your decisions will make. And whereas if you're nice, sometimes you can be nice, and it's more of a self-centered, it's more of a selfish thing because you're doing it. And a lot of times we're nice to people please. A lot of times we're nice to placate, you know, people's emotions and things like that, even our own. You know what I mean? Sometimes we're nice to ourselves, but we're not kind to ourselves, meaning like we won't submit or surrender to the truth, right? And I literally wrote a whole article on it. Check it out on my Forever Friends Academy site, where I say it's an article that I wrote, One of a Kind Love, and I wrote it like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but it talks about being kind to yourself, and it involves what I was just talking about, that when you're kind, it doesn't, you can't be kind without either embracing and being able to articulate or express the truth, right? But you're able to do it in a way, right, where there is grace, where there is mercy, where there is gratitude, and the fact that you're even able to, right, take a moment to reflect and assess where you are right now, because the grace and the mercy is in the fact that no matter what it is and what the truth exposes, you can grow from there. You can transform from there, right? And so that in it of itself triggers and motivates and awakens the power that's within you. Whereas sometimes if we're nice and we placate, it kind of binds us, right? It kind of keeps you locked up because you would rather avoid the truth. You would avoid whatever conflict, you would avoid whatever pain, whatever process that you have to go through to be able, to remain in whatever, I guess, action of being nice it is that we're doing either to someone else or towards ourselves. But anyway, we will get into that on a deeper level on another time. But I just figured I'd share it with you guys because I thought Emily's example and her choices, the options that she laid out, was a really clear-cut example of that and how that can be used instead of thinking compromise-minded first. I always like to use the example to my clients that when you think compromise, I want you to envision that you are here and your partner is on the other side. And we have this cutting board. And let's just say you guys have a deck of cards, almost like you're playing cards with each other. And usually when it comes to compromise, just imagine if both partners, right, have certain cards that they're showing and then they have other cards that they just are hiding. right? Because there are certain things that I'm just not going to let go of, but I'll give you this. I'll give you this much, And one of the things, just to go back to something that I really liked what the pastor said today, he said that when people, because he was talking about kindness and goodness and attaching it together, and he was talking about the fruits of the Spirit, and I loved how he connected them to, because he said that people who are kind, right, that's like an internal attitude that you have, whereas goodness is like an external action, right? And so basically kindness lends itself to goodness. And he was saying that people who have a character of goodness, they lean towards generosity. They are not calculating, right? Like fear, meaning like you did this and then I do this. You do this, I do this. They're not calculating that, because their goodness has afforded them to be on overflow, that they're not on E. Even if they give to you or overgive to you, they'll never be on E. Right? So really, that's why I say don't think compromise centered first. Think sacrifice in its true nature of voluntarily letting something down, right? Or letting something go, or doing something that serves beyond yourself, that is collectively thinking, right, for others, because you're only going to reap more abundance that way. That person knows they're never going to have any kind of lack, right? My husband always says, takers always, right, need, and givers always get, right? Because the taker always has to find something else, or someone else to take from, whereas versus the giver, they're going to always be in abundance. They're always going to have, even if they come, and engage with takers along the way, they're never going to be without. And so I think of that, and when it comes to compromise, so it's different, right? When that relationship is thinking, no, okay, we're going to go with sacrifice first, and sacrifice in the true meaning of it, not going through the repercussion of bad choices like Emily laid out in her first option. If the gentleman takes his route, okay, you can multiply your legacy, but there will be repercussions that you can't avoid in that, right? And if you're okay with it, dealing with those, then okay, go ahead, So in that same way, a lot of people, as I've said before in other podcasts, think that sacrifice is them living out the repercussions of their bad choices. And no, that's not sacrifice. That's your due process of paying the costs of decisions that weren't not necessarily yielded to God's truth or his wisdom, right? So there are certain things that are going to come with that. No, true sacrifice is, okay, I have the capacity and the aptitude and the willingness to serve in this way, to let down, something in this way. I'm voluntarily doing this. I'm not being forced. I'm willingly doing it. And when I do this, it's going to shift either the economy of my household, either impact the corporation I'm in, et cetera, the community I'm in. However, that's true sacrifice, right? And that sacrifice that is made is not void of the truth. It is literally grounded and built upon the truth, right? So that's kind of, right, how we kind of can interconnect the act of kindness to the act of sacrifice, rather than, okay, compromise means I'm gonna hold on to this no matter what. I'm gonna offer you these three, and so we're negotiating, And like I said, I don't want anyone who's listening who has been more compromise centered to feel like I'm demeaning you. It's not that. They're just levels, right? As we know, and I always say, in relationships, no matter what the dynamic is, if we allow God and love and his love to transform us, then we get greater capacity to do things, right? We get greater capacity to learn and be able to, demonstrate certain things in our life. So it just means that there are different levels, there are different tiers, right? So a higher level from compromise would be that, like, okay, we're going to see what the truth is, and we're gonna not hide any cards. We're gonna let them all out. Like, we both fold, like whatever we thought our wants and our desires were, we'll fold to the truth, because the truth is going to meet both of our needs. which will then ripple into our wants, right, also being met as well. So that's a different thing, That's a different thing, and I'm what's the word I'm looking for? I am appreciative, and I'm also honored in seeing, just in Emily coming on tonight and seeing the process, of what I just explained, really working in the answers and the options that she gave us, because that's what I would like to offer you guys when I talk about that there are fundamental principles that we can use to govern our relationships. And so when I see that process being shown and expressed through the answers that a consistent listener to the podcaster can kind of come up with, and I'm like, okay, God, I'm happy. I can see some of it. It's coming across. So I'm very appreciative of that. So as always, I definitely threw a messy one at y'all tonight. A messy one on, and I'll probably come on when I have more men on. I had some in the beginning, but maybe some of them had to come off, because I would definitely love to hear the male perspective when it comes to a woman who has chosen surrogacy as either her calling, or her professional, the profession that she's in. Where a lot of men fall in that, in being able to kind of either be okay and take on that with her. So nonetheless, great conversation tonight. Again, happy Father's Day to all the fathers. I pray that today you were honored, you were appreciated, not just for what you do, but for who you are. I really do believe that it's necessary, especially in this season and right now, in the shift in the culture, that we do esteem our fathers in the most genuine, truthful, and authentic way, because there's a lot that they do, and a lot in who they are, and that they're just the very presence. They're very the simplicity of their physical presence in our life, how much that does and kind of wards off so many other things, and provides this outward and invisible protection to their family. So I honor you guys today. Hopefully you guys had a wonderful day. Maybe could hopefully rested or just did something you're passionate about and were able to be creative in that light. So as always, thank you guys, all of who came on with me tonight, especially since it is Father's Day, taking out a moment to pop your head in. Let me see what Sharla's talking about. Definitely, if you took time to type and engage with me, I always appreciate that, because you definitely don't have to, and it takes time. So I appreciate it. I will be back on this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you liked anything that you heard tonight, as always, like, comment, subscribe, and share. My channel on YouTube, where all of the full episodes are, is Forever Friends Academy. Definitely tell people when I come on, so that these conversations can spread and echo, and so people can, find these tools useful, and conversations that we talk about. So definitely find Forever Friends Academy. If you're on Instagram, the link is in my bio. If you're on Twitch, Facebook, and some of the YouTube, it's in the description. And definitely feel free to go there. There are articles, there are snippets from my private group coaching, as well as I do individual coaching for singles, couples, as well as families. So if you are interested in any of that, you can find all of that on the site, Forever Friends Academy. All of it, from the group coaching, joining the group coaching and all the membership levels to the private coaching. So feel free, peruse all of that. And contact me if you'd like to kind of dive in deeper and get into it specifically based on what's going on in your life in real time. All right. But until then, you know what I like to say. Until I see you guys on Thursday, always remember to live, to love freely, All right, until next time. Bye.